guys, I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission, I'ma roll with what I'm getting. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain, keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah.
You're listening to the Tom Ficklin Show on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, your home for community radio.
Good morning, everyone. It's Autism Awareness Month, and we're really going to kick off each month we can celebrate, each day we can celebrate just being alive, particularly what's going on in the world today. But we're going to particularly focus on Autism Awareness Month, and really, rather than just a general discussion about that, we're going to be able to take a deep dive and really a perspective dive, meaning that it's just not recapitulating what it means, but what's cooking in terms of our trying to, if not solve, make it easier, find research applications, find information, just discover the science of discovery is so important. We should really not neglect that. Folks have criticized me somewhat for just focusing on so many shows pertaining to health, but I'm convinced health is wealth. Health is wealth. I'll say it today, I'll say it tomorrow. So we had folks from the Yale Social and Effective Neuroscience of Autism program at the Yale Child Study Center with us. We had the principal investigator, Dr. Chawaska, along with her clinical psychologist, I shouldn't say her, but her colleagues, clinical psychologist, Dr. Kelly Powell and Dr. Mariana Torres Vizo. They're going to be joining us along with some of the cultural ambassadors, Reverend Elvin Clayton, Sandra Trevino, and Katia Mendez. But before we do, I want to show a little clip from the Yale Child Study Center, just to indicate that there are a lot of opportunities for folks, for families, and people of all ages to kind of know what's available from a research standpoint and a civic participation standpoint.
Autism research at the Yale Child Study Center begins before birth and continues through adulthood. Help us discover new methods of early diagnosis, treatments, and enhancements for families touched by autism.
Great. Harry, thanks for sharing that. As mentioned, welcome to all the guests. Again, just want to welcome Dr. Chawaska. Dr. Chawaska is director of the Social and Affective, again, affective, not to be confused with effective, but Social and Affective Neuroscience of Autism program is the lab at the Child Study Center at Yale. And she's the director of the Yale Toddler Developmental Disabilities Clinic. Dr. Mariana Torres Vizo is with us. She's also the assistant professor of clinical child psychology at the Yale Child Study Center. I say also, Mariana, because in addition to titles, you're a person, you have responsibilities, you probably have family or relatives, so people often think that your title defines you totally, but that's not true at all. There's several titles that you don't even get paid for, so welcome. Dr. Kelly Powell is with us. Dr. Powell is an assistant professor at the Yale Child Study Center and co-director of the Yale Toddler Developmental Disabilities Clinic. We're joined by Reverend Elvin Clayton. Reverend Clayton, good morning to you. Happy Holy Week. And this is an important month for you.
Early.
I know you've been busy. And Pastor Clayton is pastor of the Walters Memorial AME Zion Church located in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He's the cultural ambassador. Sandra Trevino is with us. She's a licensed certified clinical social worker, and she specializes in mental disorders. But in addition to that, she's a cultural ambassador to the Yale Clinical Research Program. And Katia Mendez, welcome, Katia. She's a Spanish GED instructor at the New Haven Adult Ed Center. If I could just pause for a second as a plug, folks should really take advantage of the New Haven Adult Center. It's not just GED, it's many things that you can get involved with. And life is about a learning process. So I have some good friends over there. And so Katia, I look forward to seeing you more in person. And Katia is a cultural ambassador as well for the Yale Clinical Research Program. Folks, let's jump right in. We have about 50 minutes and 45 minutes. We really want to kind of unpack this, talk about your commitment, your passion, your dedication is what I guess really impressed by. Dr. Jaworska, kind of kick us off with giving us a little bit of information about what autism is and what makes it different from other language disorders.
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us here today. It's a great pleasure and great honor. And we love to talk about our work and we love to talk about kids with autism. So we're very grateful for the invitation. So autism is a complex neurodevelopmental disorder, and its primary symptoms or core symptoms involve difficulties in interacting and communicating with other people. And children with autism may also have sensory sensitivity, some motor repetitive behaviors, and also unusual interests. So it's a very complex set of behaviors that sort of come together, and we call it autism. What's interesting about this disorder is that it starts very early. We begin to see frank symptoms of autism already in the second year of life, sometimes a little earlier, but a lot of kids who have autism begin to struggle already in the second year of life. Now, when parents sort of begin to notice first difficulties, they typically notice the fact that children are late in developing language. So the kids might not be saying first words, might not be responding to language, suggesting that they don't really understand. They don't even respond when their name is called. For that reason, the first concern usually parents have is, is my child having a language delay? And that very important question that you posted, is it autism or is it a language delay, is something that we take very, very seriously in our clinical practice. And when the parents bring a baby to us, we work really hard to make that differentiation because we don't want to confuse the two. And just for parents who are listening to us, couple of pointers. So a child who have a language delay may understand less language, may not say as many words, but they are very motivated to communicate, and they will communicate with everything they got. They will communicate with sounds, with grounds, with making gestures, pointing, giving, making faces, making happy faces, making angry faces. So they communicate often to compensate for the lack of speech. What we see in children with autism is that despite the lack of spoken language, they do not try to compensate. They do not use the eye gaze, facial expressions, gestures in order to convey their needs and wants. And also when they do it very rarely. They do it much less frequently than children with developmental delay. And this is sort of like the first discrepancy that we see or look for or encourage parents to think about when the question of is it autism or is it a language delay comes to their minds.
Let's drill down a little bit, a little more on that. And Dr. Powell, I wondered, Dr. Jaworska has talked about some of the early signs, but maybe if you can elaborate or provide some additional examples in that regard. And again, I don't think we cannot emphasize as much the fact of early assessment. So share with us a little bit about some of the additional perhaps early signs and the importance of the early assessment.
Definitely. And before I even jump in and answer, I want to be clear that every child with autism is different and they can exhibit a different combination of behaviors and skills. But we've learned so much over the years through research and clinical experience that there are certain behaviors that we should sort of keep our eye out for. And as Kasia had mentioned, what we're hearing from parents time and time again is concerns about their language development, that spoken language, the sounds, the words that they're saying. But what's so important to keep in mind is that underlying language and communication is what we call nonverbal communication skills. So just to be very specific about some of the things that Kasha had mentioned, we're looking for things like making eye contact and not just looking at someone's face, but being able to look at an object and then back at a face and then back at an object, or showing smiling in response to someone else smiling, or showing an anticipation or an excitement if someone is going to engage them in a game like peekaboo. And then eventually we're looking at nonverbal forms of communication like giving things, giving toys to other people for help or to share, or holding up a toy to show somebody, or things like reaching or pointing. So all of these are these nonverbal forms of communication that in most children develop by the time a child's about 1 year old. And those end up being some of those early behaviors that are concerning for parents of children who have autism.
If the parent doesn't observe those behaviors.
Exactly.
Really, really fascinating. Dr. Torres Vizo, normally when I do the shows, we'll kind of set the groundwork and not get into the treatment or therapy aspect. But for this, I want to jump right in almost immediately in terms of what kinds of treatments or therapies are available or that you might recommend for children with autism. And if I can just throw a tagline, if a parent is not clear about whether his or her child has autism, what should they what should they do? But therapies and treatments, share with us a little bit what might be available.
So, as Kelly mentioned, kids with autism are so different. They present with such a variety of strengths and areas of difficulty. So when we talk to parents and we kind of help them on-ramp onto this road of different therapies, we also share with them what we call guiding principles. We say, you're about to hear all these letters, ABA, OT, PT, speech, and that's going to get really overwhelming, right? So I'll get into that in a minute. But the most important thing that we talk about to parents is that the best kind of treatment is a treatment that is individualized to that child's needs, okay? That's why early assessment is so important. And to answer your kind of latter question, if a parent is not sure what might be going on for them, it's important for them to talk to their pediatrician to see if it would be worth it to go into a more complex or a more specialized evaluation. Because it's not just about what do we call this presentation for this child. As you mentioned when you were introducing me, that child is a child, right? And they have their areas of strength and weakness. We want to make sure that we have a good understanding of where they're at, what their motivation is, to then be able to kind of guide those different kinds of treatment, right? We also want to think about their strengths, right? Something that we mention a lot is that a lot of kiddos on the spectrum have particular strengths around linear thinking, around sequential kind of or concrete information. So let's use those strengths in the kinds of interventions that we guide the child and the family towards. One of the recommendations that we often make is a therapy called applied behavior analysis, ABA. And ABA really focuses on taking a skill and breaking it down into tiny components, right? So using that linear and sequential thinking so that you can teach a child some of those seeds, right? Some of those base skills, and then help that child have a strong foundation to then be able to demonstrate that skill across people, across settings, and across materials. One of the things that we've learned about individuals on the spectrum is that it might be particularly hard for them to learn a skill in a particular space and then use it in other places. That's where you get into some muddy waters when kiddos might be misunderstood and saying that they're doing this on purpose. They know how to do it, but they won't, right? So when we talk about individualized intervention that is tailored to the child's needs and focuses on the generalization or expansion of skills, we talk about ABA, breaking a skill down into small components. We want to consider things like speech therapy to help with some of those language delays. And as my colleagues mentioned, not just the sounds that we're using to communicate, but using their eye gaze, using their, as you see me, using my hands here, gesturing to really enhance that communication. And for some of those individuals who might have, let's say, some sensory needs, you might also see occupational therapy or even physical therapy if we see other difficulties in that area. Lots of letters, really overwhelming space. So a clear evaluation and a partnership with those folks who are supporting the family is important to identify priorities, to identify tempo, and to identify what is just the next step.
Indeed, and just before I come to Reverend Clayton and Katia and Sandra, I was curious. You mentioned lay people have heard this word spectrum a lot. Were you describing sounds like the quantum levels of the subspectrum? But I mean, it's a spectrum to the nth degree. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. The way that we understand autism is, as Kelly mentioned, we have learned about some of those kind of core deficits, right, or domains, but how that can look to a child or a family can be completely different, right? We can think about the child's language abilities, both in terms of verbal or nonverbal communication. We can think about some of those repetitive behaviors, but also how impairing they might be or not,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that all of these, that's why it's important to have a comprehensive evaluation, because if you get kind of a standard treatment package, chances are that it's not individually supporting that child to go to their maximum potential.
Excellent. Katia and Reverend Clayton and Sandra, jump in, because the brief research that I've done is that the Centers for Disease Control is showing a steady increase in the prevalence of autism among children. I'm not sure whether we've identified people better, or that's a poor way of saying it, or whether it's really been a true increase. But the data also shows a significant progress made in the number of children receiving developmental screening. Share with us a little bit about why the ambassadors feel that this is so important for this campaign and the research for autism to be, and the information to be widely shared in the community. Reverend Clayton, would you like to go first?
Good morning, Tom. Yes. It is important for the ambassadors to be involved in the awareness campaign and research for autism, because we are connected to the community. Every ambassador is basically a community worker.
Mm-hmm.
And as you heard earlier, these children have various issues that perhaps the parents don't even understand, and it starts very, very early. And oftentimes, some parents are in denial that the child may have, or the child may be different. But the sooner the parent or guardian gets that child some help, the better. There's something that's called developmental monitoring, and perhaps one of the experts can talk about it a little later. That it starts as early as maybe as 1 or 2 years old. They watch the children, their progress.
Mm-hmm.
When is he talking at the same time the average child talks at that age? Does he walk? How does he play with his toys? How does he react to his friends? So we as ambassadors may be able to encourage a parent or guardian who's on the fence about getting the help he or she may need.
Yes, Sandra, please weigh in. Reverend Clayton might have said it all, but I think the ladies you can say it also in a way that's unique to
Yes.
you.
Thank you so much, Tom, for providing the space and the opportunity to talk about autism. It's extremely near and dear to my heart as I work with families almost for 2 decades already regarding autism. It's extremely important for me to be involved, as I see there are not a lot of individuals or minority or diverse individuals in the community to provide some of the assistance or advocacy around autism. I certainly see my role as an ambassador to provide a bridge between researchers and families, as we know that receiving that developmental screening and adequate care at a younger age can make a significant difference, not only in their progress, but in their entire lives, right? And this connection can also help with resources and early on interventions for family, but it can also help a family in regards to some of the misinformation some of the myths and some of the stigma that is associated with autism. And so that connection to me is invaluable. And thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Sandra?
Hi, I would like to tell something. I'm Katia Mendez.
Katia, I'm sorry.
Yes, I agree with both because it's important for our family to promote, to communicate. We need to communicate all our family about the follow-up of psychomotor develop of our children, because if they keep eyes in that develop, it's important to know that it's a different clinical manifestation of the mental delay expression, and either for autism. It's important to keep eye in this because this disease is not alone. It's a different kind of manifestation, and it's important to let know our family about that. I remember when I was a doctor in Cuba, I'm a medical doctor from Cuba, and I all the time in our consult with the psychomotor develop of the lactant, baby after born, and all develop. In the first year, we follow up all the develop of the kids. It's the day by day with the family. It's important communication. And it's important to let know the school and all the family, collaborate with they to know what happened with that kind of kids, Is the early diagnosis is better to develop for our society.
And Dr. Chawaska and Dr. Powell, Dr. Torres, Katia has mentioned the family connection, the need for communication. Is it true in this regard that there has been an increase, or is it just that we've been able to identify the issues quicker?
Well, Tom, I think when people started describing autism in the 1940s, the field thought that autism is a very rare disorder. As we started seeing more and more children and evaluating their social functioning on a more sophisticated way, in a more clinically sensitive way, we, I think, as a field have realized that there are many more children with autism than we were initially identifying. One group of children that we are now considering part of the spectrum are children with intellectual disability. Typically, their social difficulties would be ignored and taken under umbrella of intellectual disability. Right now, we are addressing their needs on both levels. Another group, very important group of children, are children who are somewhat less affected and not intellectually disabled, but still have major challenges in social interactions. These are the children who would often carry in the past multiple diagnoses: emotion regulation, ADHD, executive dysfunction, anxiety, many different things, and none of it fully would capture the child. So now what we are doing is including some of these children, understanding that some of the difficulties that they are experiencing are secondary to their social vulnerabilities. We also discovered over the years that many children with genetic syndromes can have autism, right? So we are now including them under the umbrella. A very recent syndrome, which seems to be where we discovered that a lot of kids may have autism, is congenital heart disease, in addition to Fragile X or tuberous sclerosis.
You lost me there, because this is so fascinating, because the general person on the street has heard one or two definitions, but the congenital heart disease, say that again, the implication.
Congenital heart disease, it's a syndrome that affects heart development, but it also affects some other areas of development. And research studies show that slightly higher percentage of kids with congenital heart disease may develop autism as well. So what it tells us is that we should be monitoring their development as they go along, just to see and make sure that we are addressing all of their challenges. And so we also have other risk factors groups, for instance, premature babies. Babies who experience less optimal prenatal development may be at risk for greater for developing autism compared to kids who are full term. And that likelihood of developing autism increases as prematurity increases. So the younger the baby when they were born, in 20 to 30 weeks, the greater likelihood of autism as well. So this is another population that we should be targeting for our surveillance or monitoring, as Raven Clayton mentioned, developmental monitoring.
Really fascinating. Dr. Powell, Dr. Torres, anything to add on this? Because it's just in the last 10 minutes it's opened up. I've known a little bit about this issue, but I know mine is 10. I know maybe one thing now, but anything else you'd like to add in terms of the diagnostic insights that have been in operation?
One thing I would just encourage parents to do is sort of trust their gut. And if there are concerns, to raise it to the pediatrician. And try not to be afraid to raise it to the pediatrician. While pediatricians are supposed to be doing these standard developmental screenings, not all of them do for a range of different reasons. So I always want to empower families to express any concerns they have, even if they feel like it's mild in nature.
Dr. Torres?
Oh, I believe my colleagues said it all at this point.
Okay, all right. The teamwork is dream work, sure. There are claims. One of the things I love about this show is we have a chance to dispel notions and myths and controversies and speculation and stuff on the internet that everybody thinks they're an expert these days. But you hear on the street that there are claims that children can outgrow autism. Is there any truth? Is there any truth in this?
You know, Tom, it's an excellent question and very hard and dear to my heart. So when I started in this field, it was 22 years ago, and we would typically not diagnose autism until the child was 5, 6 years old. And there haven't been too many really good treatment and empirically validated treatment approaches for these kids. And so when the children were followed over time, their long-term outcomes or ability to go to school, go to college, live independently, were quite limited. So, and things started changing. What happens is that we have developed tools for diagnosing autism in much younger children, already in the second, third year of life. The field made a tremendous progress developing intervention strategies for young kids. Mariana mentioned some of them involving applied behavior analysis. There are many, many different kinds that aim to improve social functioning, communication, language, learning skills, attention. And with all these skills, so when we give these very young kids all these fabulous skills, these kids make tremendous progress. And we see much larger proportion of kids now finishing high school, mainstream high school, going to college, and aspiring to independent careers and independent lives, which is incredible.
Just repeat that thought again. Repeat that thought. That's so important.
There's as the intervention, as the age of diagnosis become earlier, and as we are intervening more extensively and using empirically validated treatments, the long-term outcomes of children with autism has improved tremendously. I can give you one of the examples. So many years ago, 18 years ago or so, I saw in a clinic, I saw a little boy who was about 2, and he didn't particularly look good. He had extensive delays, he had difficulties with communication. He had difficulties learning, and it wasn't quite clear what his long-term outcome will be. This little boy received very intensive intervention. He was very lucky to have supportive parents, and he ended up in a school district who understood his needs and also his strengths. And they were able to create an environment in which he blossomed in terms of his strengths. And just last several months ago, we received a note from his mom saying that he just finished high school. He was admitted to several colleges and is going to study biology in for the next 4 years, which was like the best news anyone can receive in our world. So outgrowing autism, there's no limits for what kids can do in realizing their full potential, given that we give them a boost very early.
Dr. Power, Dr. Torres, we are going to go. Excuse me. We are going to go to the research shortly, but any thoughts in this regard about the hopeful developmental outcomes?
I think Kasia said it best. I think in a nutshell, early intervention really leads to better outcomes for children and families. And our role is to help support families to get on that journey and to be able to figure out what are the interventions that are best for them and for their child.
Okay, Torres, Visa.
The only thing that I would add, right, when we talk about outgrowing, right, it makes it sound like, oh, they no longer have autism, they no longer meet this criteria. Can we call them something else? And if we go back to this idea that a person is a person is a person, right? It might be that the individual might still meet criteria for autism spectrum disorder and go to college and have a job and get married and have friends and do whatever they want to do. So one of the first things that we focus on as we're helping families is to help massage what this word autism means, right? For a lot of families, and particularly in my personal experience, working with Spanish-speaking families, right, or other marginalized communities, we hear autism and we think they won't grow, that we got to just care for them, right? And autism can mean so many different things, and early intervention can expand what that word can mean for that individual. And our kids surprise us every day. I mean, even that video that we just saw in the beginning, our kids surprise us every day. So we always tell parents, let's not put a ceiling on our kiddos. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep going, because the world can be whatever they want it to be if we support them.
Ambassadors, I'm going to come to you in a second, but I just want to spend one more time with the doctors. And this is not, when I say doctors in terms of medical doctor or PhD, this is not a setup question or a question, a gotcha question, but we hear so much about the alleged health disparities. Are there any health disparities that exist across racial and ethnic groups? Because it seems to me that the SANA program, if there are, is designed to kind of minimize these disparities at least. But are there some disparities that you've recognized over the years or that you see currently across racial and ethnic groups?
Short answer, yes.
We have 10 minutes, so we need short answers are good. Okay. But you're not resting on that fact. Mm-hmm. On the contrary. All right. Cultural ambassadors. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just to add to that. So I have a perspective of over 20 years of being here and seeing how things evolve over time. And I am so grateful that we are having meetings like that. And for me, our work in the clinics and also through our research program provides tremendous resources for family. And for me, it has always been a mission to make sure these resources are available to every family, every immigrant family, every minority family, every parent who's worried about their kid. And it was not always easy. What I am seeing in the past, I would say 5 years, is that we are getting much better. We are seeing so many more families reaching out to us, which means that we are a little better at communicating what we do but there's so much more work that remains to be done. So thank you for having us here today.
Culture ambassadors, I want you to weigh in. It's like 11:38. We're going to, like 11:45, I'm going to have to jump to the research because that's really a primary reason that we're here today, is for people to know that this is not just a dialogue and just patting ourselves on the back, but there's true active work going on from a research standpoint. But I guess Winter Cultural Ambassadors, if you've had a chance to provide any feedback to the SANA program, in terms of recruitment materials and what advice you might have been giving them, so we can, because we're in an abolitionist strategy to try to, eliminate racism and sexism, and et cetera. But ambassadors, any thoughts in terms of your activity and your interface with the folks on the other side of the table? But actually, it's one table, and we're all kind of all partners together. Reverend Clayton.
Yes, Tom. We had a group meeting concerning this matter, and I think I'm going to let Sandra talk about this a little bit, and then I'll come back in. Right. She mentioned about a walk throughout the state. You could share some light on.
Excellent. Sandra?
So yes, thank you, Reverend Clayton. Thank you, Tom. I think one of the things that's being done out in the community in regards to research is the autism awareness. And I think we should also focus on autism understanding, right? Because it's extremely complex, and every family who has an individual or child or an adult on the spectrum really sees so many different, right, behavior needs, so many different individual needs, and really just concentrating on the part of that family and the needs. In regards to the meeting that we had, it's very important to have a team that is diverse, right? We've talked over and over again in this short amount of time about the importance of language, or the lack of language, the importance of communication, how to communicate. And so reaching out to the communities to find individuals or families who would like to enroll and be part of this, the research that's taking place, it's important to be able to talk their language, right? Whether it's English was a different language, it's to talk about their traditions, their cultures, what works for them, what hasn't worked for them, and really address the language barrier, right? And make sure that we're not biased when we're really working with families, and make them aware of additional resources that could be out there that they may not know. And that's the important role of the ambassador, is connecting these two roles to make sure that there's benefit on both sides, and that could open doors for so many other researchers and so many other research studies and other families that are in need of answers.
And Tom,
yeah, please, Reverend Clayton.
There are flyers that are used for autism, but it just can't be one flyer, because the one flyer doesn't fit all situations. So it has to be culturally sound, the language has to be sound, and no matter how good a flyer may be or how well it's put together, it has to be placed in a place where those who need to see it and who have the need can have access to it, either through Zoom or online, or in a barbershop, or beauty shop, a post office, a library. And that was some of the things that we discussed in working through this situation.
We have only 8 or 9 minutes. Let's jump to the lab, because it's so important. People have this myth in my mind that research is just for research only, but you guys are involved with translation, with finding, with discovering. To say that you're like Columbus is a bad term, but you're into the discovery mode. So doctors, let's just jump in and let's just freelance on what the lab is all about, what you're looking for, how you're recruiting folks, why it's important. Just Kasha, jump in for me. Start us off.
All right, my pleasure. So we have an amazing team in our lab. It's very interdisciplinary, which is a little unusual, because we have a very strong team of clinicians, speech and language pathologists, social workers, and also basic experimental scientists, statisticians, brain imagers. And that group, that expertise together brings us to a very completely new level in terms of our ability to ask new questions and find answers. So the main, like in a nutshell, the main focus of our lab is to discover early mechanisms that give rise to symptoms of autism. This is really important to discover mechanisms because only then we can actually change, we can actually address the root causes of autism. Otherwise, we are only intervening to diminish the symptoms. Now, in the first phase of our research, let's say the first 10 years of our research, we focused a lot in trying to answer a question, can we diagnose autism in 2-year-olds? What's the stability of the diagnosis? What are the outcomes? What are the predictors of outcome? And we found the answers, and along with our colleagues around the country, we know now that we can identify kids very early on. We know how to do it well. And that expertise is now reflected what we do in our clinic with Kelly and Mariana and other clinical members. What our lab is interested in now is what happens before the symptoms come online, right? So there's a silent period between pregnancy and 12, 18 months when we cannot see symptoms of autism, but we know that the genetic factors that are involved in autism are already at work, and they are affecting how brain is developing. And only later they will be reflected in behavior that we can diagnose. And we are really interested in that silent or prodromal period to figure out how the genetic factors are changing the brain, which then is going to result in the behaviors we would like to diminish. So in order to do that, we are now pioneering a study which evaluates brain development in the last trimester of pregnancy in newborns, and then following these babies until they are 2 to see how well they do. And what we can do then is to look to see how well the brain development patterns are correlating with later language, autism symptoms, and so forth. We are, I think, the only place in the world that's doing this kind of research with the focus on prenatal development and neonatal development. And it's really groundbreaking work, and we are tremendously excited about it. And we have a wonderful support from community of parents. And the reason why this is important is that in order to do this kind of important work, we have to recruit babies who are at increased risk for developing autism, right? And we know that once there's one child with autism in the family, there might be an increased risk for a second baby or next baby being born for developing autism as well. And the risk is somewhat higher than it is in general population. In general population, out of 100 babies, we have about 2 that may develop autism. Among siblings, it could be up to 20. So this is a population of kids who need to be monitored, as Reverend Clayton mentioned, for their developmental outcome, because if they're going to develop something, some kind of vulnerability, we want to be there and intervene and help them along. So what we are doing.
Yeah, tell me. I can't hold this any longer. How do I get involved? How do families get involved? I'm ready to sign up.
Okay, fantastic. So if you have a family member who has a child who has autism, it could be your child, it could be your own siblings, and now you're expecting a baby, right? The second baby, come and talk to us. We can enroll babies during pregnancy, we can enroll them when they are born, and we will follow them very closely, monitor them. Kelly will, Mariana will, I will, we'll have our eyes on your babies, so that if there's any concern, we can react, we can act as early as possible. And that work really helps us understand very elementary mechanisms of treatment in autism.
Is there a particular telephone number or website, or what's the best way for access?
Mm-hmm.
Who can
Yeah.
share that?
ace@yale.edu will be the easiest thing. Alpha Charlie Echo, ace@yale.edu. You send an email, we will get in touch. The number is also 203-764-5933. We're happy to share that information.
You can repeat that again. Go ahead.
Number is 203-764-5933. ace@yale.edu.
ace@yale.edu. And how long will this really exciting endeavor be taking? How long will you be recruiting people for? Another 8 months, a year? What's the time frame?
Well, we're hoping that we'll be extending this study for another 5 years.
Another 5 years. So really, yeah. So jump on this bandwagon. Let's talk some more. We have about five more minutes about the research project. Progress, impediments. What do you need? You need me to kind of donate $1 billion? What's cooking?
We do, and please do. Please do. Don't hold back on the donations. So if you have trouble remembering any of the addresses that Mariana mentioned, just email us, and it would be first name, last name @yale.edu. Any of us will be happy to answer your questions and to provide more information. So just to we're often faced with the question, what are we really trying to accomplish by the work that we are doing, right? So there's a one thing is to study specific mechanisms, but there's a larger picture that we care about tremendously. One thing that we care about is to educate the broader public about autism and the needs, but also tremendous strengths that the kids and the families have, which are often overlooked. And that's why you see us going to every conference we can go to. Parent, if you would like us to come, we'll come. Just invite us, we'll come, we'll talk. The second, what we are hoping to achieve is that by educating public about autism, about all facets of autism, we are going to facilitate greater acceptance of the neurodiversity and appreciation of the unique contribution of the kids and their families that have to our society and to our communities. I think as a society, we still have room to grow in developing appreciation and acceptance for everyone in our society. And finally, because we are so interested in mechanism, because we are so interested in identifying new treatments or new treatment targets, we really want to make sure that every kid reaches their full potential, that no one falls through the cracks. As Kelly said, every kid is different. Every kid comes with a different set of challenges and strengths and talents, and being able to meet them where they are and give them a boost so that they can reach whatever they want, whatever they can, is a sort of the most important overarching mission of our research project.
Is there a cost to participate?
Not at all.
Cost. In fact, families are compensated for their participation in our studies.
Mm-hmm. We have 2 minutes. Let's take 30 seconds each for last words from everybody. Who should I start with? Katia, 30 seconds of your last words. And not the 7 last words. This is the 7 last words season. So some people might understand that. Katia, any parting thoughts?
Okay.
I can come back to you. I can come back. Okay, come back. All right. Mariana.
Just as we mentioned early, if to the parents, right, if you have any concerns or questions, if you have that gut feeling that something going on, it's easy to say, right? But do not be afraid to reach out to your community. One of the things that Sandra mentioned that has to do with these health disparities is that there's a higher level of stigma, and there's also a smaller professional community for marginalized or underserved communities, okay? So if there's any way in which we can be of support to the community to be able to help level that playing field, to support the expertise that already is on the ground, we also love collaborating, and we love being able to support one another in that. So help, parents, reach out if you need, if you have that gut instinct that something might be going on, and to the professional community that's around. We love collaboration. We love empowering communities.
Sandra, Harry's going to play the music that's going to kick us off, but he's not being rude. He gets us to go to the next one. But Sandra, any last words?
Yes, I actually encourage families to get involved. I encourage them to call, to ask questions, to participate. I know that sometimes there's fear associated with that, but there's always fear to the unknown, right? And we're not going to know unless we start asking those questions to get those answers. So please consider being a part of this great discovery that's taking place.
Kelly?
I'd just like to say our team is so deeply committed to engaging the community and really eager to hear everyone's ideas and to hear voices that we haven't heard before. And we want to do better, and we want to engage the community as best as we can. So please, please give us feedback.
Katia.
Me?
You, yes.
Okay.
Okay, you're lucky this time, Katia. The next show, you're going to be I'm going to call it you the first. So you're
As
lucky.
I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission. I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going. Better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain. Keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up. Fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road. Less camera action already.